Hello, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Naga Monchetti and Roger Johnson.
Our headlines today. Clashes in the Netherlands as COVID restrictions are tightened across mainland Europe.
And a clampdown in Austria, a full lockdown from Monday and compulsory vaccinations by February.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Cleared of murder in the United States, the teenage gunman who shot dead 2 people during racial unrest in 2020. President Biden expresses his anger but calls for calm.
Good morning. There's growing concern over the safety of the Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai, whom the Women's Tennis Association has still not been able to contact, and now the United Nations says it wants proof of the player's whereabouts.
Ed Sheeran joins a host of stars and performers. This year's Children in Need raises nearly £40 million on the night.
Good morning. It's a mild start to the day today, and most places should see quite a bit of dry weather, but things are turning much colder through the weekend, and we're going to see a chilly northerly wind developing tomorrow. I'll have all the details here on BBC Breakfast.
Good morning. It's Saturday the 20th of November, and today police in the Dutch city of Rotterdam have been firing warning shots. They used water cannon during clashes with anti-lockdown protesters.
Yeah, the Netherlands and Austria have imposed strict lockdowns following a steep rise in coronavirus infections across the continent. Tim Muffat's got the latest.
Protesters in Rotterdam responding to the partial lockdown imposed in the Netherlands. Police used water cannon and fired warning shots. At least 2 people were injured. Restrictions here began on Monday and are set to be in place for another 2 weeks at least. Like many countries in Europe, the Netherlands has seen a sharp rise in COVID cases. In Austria, a 20-day lockdown will start this Monday. People will be asked to work from home and non-essential shops will close. In February, COVID vaccinations will become compulsory.
Well, what we experience in Austria right now is, in my view, an unfortunate collusion of the fact that we have a fairly low vaccination rate in the population and that the waning of immunity hits Austria now, 6 months after we started our vaccination program. And that is unfortunately right at the beginning of the winter season where people are moving indoors.
In Germany, COVID cases are also rising sharply. The government is set to introduce restrictions for unvaccinated people in areas where hospital admissions exceed a certain level. As for the prospects of a full lockdown, the German government says nothing has been ruled out. In the UK yesterday, just over 44,000 new people tested positive for coronavirus. Over the week, there was a 13% increase in cases compared to the previous 7 days. Between the 9th and 15th of November, just over 6,000 people were admitted to hospital with COVID. That's a fall of 4.5% compared to the previous 7 days. At the moment, the UK is not witnessing the surge in cases being seen in some other countries.
We have, I'm sure, the highest levels of overall immunity in Europe. It's over 90% amongst adults and approaching that level in children as well now. So that is quite a different situation to many countries in Europe, including Austria and Germany, who didn't have as bad first waves or second waves and didn't have their significant Delta wave yet either.
There are renewed calls for people to get booster jabs if they're eligible, in the hope the UK can avoid the tougher restrictions being imposed elsewhere. Tim Muffett, BBC News.
Now, the US President Joe Biden has said that he is angry after a teenager who shot dead 2 people was cleared of murder.
Kyle Rittenhouse argued that he'd acted in self-defence when he killed 2 men and wounded another during racial justice protests last year. Our Washington correspondent Nomir Iqbal has more.
The defendant will rise and face the jury and hearken to its verdicts.
A dangerous vigilante or someone acting in self-defence. After 26 hours, the jury decided Kyle Rittenhouse's fate.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The 12 men and women of the jury accepted the teenager's claim he killed out of fear for his safety.
Somehow, some way, those 12 jurors found that he was innocent.
Outside court, the political divisions this case has caused were clear.
If you attack me, I have the right to defend myself. That's what Kyle was on trial for, and that's what Kyle is now found acquitted of. Okay, so you telling me if two guys come up to you and accost you, you can't defend yourself? That's what was on trial today.
There is no way in a law and a land of law where a person can shoot 3 people, kill 2 of them, and be acquitted. There's just no way.
The shooting happened against the backdrop of nationwide protests over racism and police brutality following the murder of George Floyd. In Kenosha, another black man named Jacob Blake had been shot by police 7 times, and on the 3rd night of riots, Kyle Rittenhouse entered the city. He said he came to provide security.
Somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I can protect myself, obviously.
In a series of confrontations, he shot dead Joseph Rosenbaum, who had chased after him into this car park. He then killed another man who ran after Rittenhouse, thinking he was an active shooter. A 3rd man survived. Police later arrested the teenager and charged him with murder.
People right there.
At his trial, there were tears and a controversial defence by his team in regards to the shooting of Jacob Blake.
Other people in this community have shot somebody 7 times, and it's been found to be okay. And my client did it 4 times in 3/4 of a second to protect his life from Mr. Rosenbaum. I'm sorry, but that's what happened.
This not guilty verdict is seen as a referendum on an issue that polarizes Americans beyond Kenosha, and that is the issue of gun ownership. For many conservative groups, Kyle Rittenhouse is now seen as a hero, but for many liberal groups, he is the face of a gun culture out of control, and they're worried by being cleared of the charges, what it might mean now for future protests. Can Americans turn up with a gun but not face any consequences? Nomi Iqbal, BBC News, Kenosha.
Colin Pitchfork, the man who killed 2 teenagers in the 1980s, is back in prison less than 2 months after being released. It's understood he breached the terms of his licence but did not commit any further offences. He served 33 years for killing 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire.
Single-use plastic plates, cutlery and polystyrene cups could all be banned in England. 4.25 billion items of throwaway cutlery, most of which are plastic, are used in England every year, but just 10% are recycled. A public consultation on the issue will begin today.
All materials have an environmental impact, whether they be wood, paper, glass, etc. And as we've just closed from the Climate Change Summit, it's important we remember that the goods that we consume, the clothes we wear, and the food we buy contribute to nearly half of all global emissions.
Now, almost £40 million has been raised by the annual BBC Children in Need appeal this year.
You know, despite whatever's going on, that appeal always attracts people's generosity, doesn't it?
People are generous.
Amazingly generous. The show is jam-packed with the usual comedy sketches, star-studded performances. Our entertainment correspondent Colin Patterson will take you through it.
For the first time in its 41-year history, Children in Need took place in the north, at Media City in Salford, and some familiar faces were on duty to welcome Pudsey. Ed Sheeran kick-started proceedings, but it wasn't the most talked about music performance of the evening. That belonged to the all-star puppet ensemble, covering a Starship classic. And in a special news and sport episode of I Can See Your Voice, the challenge was to work out if this was Mike Bushell's real singing voice. Turns out it wasn't.
Hi.
Hi.
EastEnders Janine Butcher met Coronation Street's Steve McDonald on first dates.
You ever been married?
Well, you could say that, yeah.
A couple of times then? 7.
Masterminds Clive Myery tested Mel Gedroych on the life and times of her co-host, Graham Norton.
What is Graham's favourite film?
Cling film.
Ooh, no, E.T.
And Owain Wynne Evans found out just how much his 24-hour drumathon had raised.
Here we go.
And that's helped the total money raised on the night reach
a whopping £39,389,048.
an increase of £2 million on last year. Colin Patterson, BBC News, Salford.
Just spectacular, isn't it?
Fun
People
night.
are so generous, and the number always goes up as well afterwards. So thank you.
So thank you, because and we often show kind of where the money is going and how it's being used, and helping a variety of people and changing lives. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and well done, Mike. Ooh, well, that
Talk about that a bit later.
Yeah.
11 minutes past 6. Let's take a look at some of today's papers. PM demands migrant fix. That's the lead headline in The Times. The paper reports that Boris Johnson is exasperated by his government's failure to stem the number of migrants crossing the Channel, prompting him to order a cross-Whitehall review.
The Guardian has spoken to Lord Bikku Parekh, who wrote a key report on the future of multi-ethnic Britain more than 20 years ago. That about the racism scandal engulfing the sport of cricket at the moment. He says it's the result of successive governments failing to embrace multiculturalism.
The Daily Mirror leads with double child killer Colin Pitchfork being recalled to prison. And social media has been reacting to the acquittal of Carl Rittenhouse, the teenager who stood trial for murder after shooting dead 2 people in Wisconsin. The Kenosha News was clearly on standby for violence in the wake of the verdict, but the paper tweeted that it was all quiet at 9 in the evening.
Let's have a look inside. We're heading towards Christmas, of course. Are we? Did you not realise? We're 10 days away from being able to open your Advent calendars, and The Sun has a story about different types of Advent calendars this year. Pull a crackling, a pig out, pork scratchings Advent calendar. There you go. If you really, not for one for the vegetarians, obviously, but if you like a little savoury nibble.
Are the pork scratchings wrapped up, or are they in a box? And are they all different? Because the joy of an Advent calendar is that in every box it's different. Yeah. So is it this? Is
they
it
are different?
Are they?
Yeah, according to the story, they're.
I've never liked
different
pork scratchings, by the way. So,
no.
but tell me.
£15. It's the Snaffling Pig Pork Crackling Calendar. It has maple, pigs in blankets, salt and vinegar, barbecue flavour, black pepper flavour.
Is it crackling?
I guess, yeah.
Or is it a pigs in blankets?
Oh, well, you're picking holes now. It's a pork-based Advent calendar.
What's the weirdest Advent calendar? Pork-based Advent calendar.
Apparently this
Bit of pork every day on the run up to Christmas.
This goes on to list other. There's a cheese one available from a different supplier.
I like cheese.
There's an adult one available according to this story.
What's the adult one?
Well, not to be discussed at 6:15 in the morning. It does go into detail, but anyway.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.